Hey YouTubers, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a really cool video. We're going to show how to cut in and roll in a wall and finish it with one coat. There is a caveat here, and that is usually we can only get away with this if we're painting a color that is the same as the original color. Maybe it's gotten faded a little bit and we just want to freshen up with one coat. Or we have a color that's very, very close. It's in the same hue, if you will. It's in the same color range. And there is one other possibility that certain premium primer paints, I won't name any brands, but some paints that are formulated with a primer and paint make a claim to coat in one. And if we use this process, there's good possibility that it could happen. But again, it's probably because it's in the right color hue. You're not trying to change from one extreme color to another. But with this system I'm going to show you, we've got the best shot at it. And so I'll explain some of the nuances that we have to consider when we're trying to do this approach. So let's get into it. So you probably can't see on the camera, but this room has been prepped out. There's some existing scuffs on the wall that are showing up on the flat yellowish paint. And we've also done some spackling and sanded it off. So what we're going to do first is we call it spot priming, but it's not really primer. We're using the finished paint. And because the spackle is an acrylic based spackle, we don't have to literally use a primer on those spots. And as I mentioned, if we're using a primer paint, even if it was drywall mud or it wasn't an acrylic based filler, we could go ahead and just spot prime using the primer paint if that's what we're using. If not, then we may have to use a primer on say a drywall mud if that's how we touched up the walls. Nevertheless, I'm just going to go ahead and show you how we spot prime. Then we're going to cut in, and then we're going to roll. So there's some details that I want to talk to you about as we go through each process. So for now, we're just going to use our Pelican. We've got our 2.5 inch cutting brush, and we've got our whiz roller. We've got our product all loaded up, ready to go. So what we do is we just load up our whiz roller, and then we start to hit the spots that we've already spackled up, or any spots that have been dark. I hope you can see the contrast there. It goes on pretty light. One of the details I want to discuss is when we're trying to paint a wall in one coat, we cannot skimp on the paint. We can't try to make the paint stretch too far, and we need to have confidence that the paint won't sag or run on us. So we load up our roller and we get that product on there. Now we want to make sure we feather this out because it can dry fairly quickly on us, but we don't want to overwork the paint. So we're just going to go along and look for some spots that we've spot primed, like here. We're not using a dry roller here. We lay that on, but we just make sure that the edges are feathered out, like that. We'll just go along, cover all the spots we spackled, make sure the edges are feathered, and then don't be afraid to a little more paint on. Obviously we're not going to use so much paint that it's going to start sagging or running on us, but we don't want to spread it out so far either that it's not going to cover. So now this will just dry up slightly as we're cutting in, and then when we put our final coat on, it should cover all those dark spots or any spots that we've spackled. And just continue to go around. Just don't be afraid to put some paint on. You don't have to use a dry roller, excessively that it's going to be dripping and running all over the place. Okay, so that looks like our spot priming, and that's going to dry up as we cut in, which I'll talk about now. So for cutting in, we'll start at the top left-hand corner as usual. I want to show you how far I'll brush as I cut. So you might not see this first one, but I'll get started. I'm only going to come out about 6 inches. So I come from left to right, and I make sure I get the bulk of the paint, and then I just cut in back into the corner. I apologize if you can't see this part. So hopefully you can see this. So about 2 inches from the end of that I'll start, and I'll just lay the brush down and come out about 6 inches. Then I come back on the outside edge of what I painted, pick up that edge, then I cut in and bring it back. Okay? Then I'll do the same again, 2 inches away from where it ended, come out about 6 inches, come back to smooth out that bottom edge, and then cut in and bring it back and come back into that wet area. Then I just take my brush, smooth it all the way back in. So I've come now about 18 inches, 2 feet. Now I take my whiz roller and start in the middle and just work it back and forth within that 18-inch area. Then I get the bottom edge, like this edge, make sure that there's no built-up edge there, and then I get as close to the ceiling as I can, and I bring it back there. So that's that section done. Then I get my brush again, 2 inches away, lay down the paint, and that I only go about 6 inches. Bring it back, cut in, bring it back, and then keep working away like that. And don't want to overreach, don't want to fall off your ladder or step stool. Bring it back, and then just bring it back to where you started. Take your whiz roller, load it up again. No need to use a dry roller. We want to get the paint on there. You've got to cover this thing in one coat, remember? So then you just go, spread that out evenly, back to where it's wet. Then you get this side, and then you start from this side to this point. Close to the seat, and then make sure it doesn't slide. The tendency with these whiz rollers is that they slide. Make sure it rolls. Bring it all the way back where you started that section. And it's time to move the ladder. So then we center our ladder in between this next space. Again, got to keep that paint, that brush wet, have confidence that the paint isn't going to run or sag. You're going to get paint on the wall, but not so much that it's going to do that. And as long as we bring our brush through the paint at least once or twice at the most, it's probably not going to sag. So again, our loaded whiz roller, start in the middle, work our way out, feather out the bottom edge, and bring our top edge back in. See, there it slipped. Make sure this rolls. Get that same effect as the big roller when we apply it. So now we got our inside corners, and I'll show you how we paint those with the whiz roller. What I'm going to do is load up And we'll start about a foot down from our bottom edge. We'll start working it out. We want to do about 2 foot sections. So again, we get our inside edge here, feather that in, and then we want to roll right into that corner. The end of the whiz roller is soft. It has nap on it. So we're actually going to paint into there, but what happens is it just spreads it on there. So what we have to do is load up our roller again. And then we'll start in the middle of that area, and we'll start filling that in. Feather out the inside edge, and come back in as close as you can to that corner without touching it. And roll back up. And then you just continue on. Move our ladder out to the wall. Start about a foot down. Work the paint back and forth. Not too much, don't want to thin it out too far. Feather out that inside edge, and then go right into the corner. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but there's a width of the roller of paint on that, on this wall here. So then you just load it up again. Don't use that dry roller. We're going to load this up. Start about halfway. Start spreading it out. Go back into that leading edge. Feather out the inside edge as close as you can to the inside corner, and finish it up. Now that we've got it cut in with the whiz roller, we're going to roll it out. And this is a critical stage too. If we're going to try and coat our wall with one coat, we have to make sure there are no misses. We have to make sure that our paint is evenly spread, especially if there's any kind of sheen on it. Flat and eggshell, maybe not as critical. If we start to get into a pearl or a satin finish or a semi-gloss, and definitely with a full gloss, we've got to make sure that our paint is not going to puddle or sag or have any ropes or runs or splashes or drips, if you will. Any blemishes in the paint whatsoever. So instead of doing our rolling technique that I've demonstrated before in other videos, we're going to make sure that the paint is spread more evenly so there's no puddling, no opportunity for defects in the finish. So I'll show you how I go about it, and hopefully if you adopt the same process you'll get good results. So we're just using the traditional roller and pole and tray, and we load up our paint, and we're using a 1/2 inch nap so I can get good coverage and also be able to spread out my paint nicely. So we load up our roller. What I want to do is start in the middle of the wall about 2 feet out from the edge, and then I go up into this left hand corner and pull it down, so about 3 roller widths across. Then come straight up, then create a cross back down to the bottom left hand corner, come up, bring it back through into the middle where there's gaps. Alright, then I want to start at the top again, come down and keep my roller on the bottom, bring it across about 1/2 the roller width, bring it down again, bring it across about 1/2 the roller width, and down, bring it across, and down. So we painted a section out, we smoothed out a section that's about 3 roller widths wide. And so we just want to keep doing that all the way across. Start in the middle again, up to that corner, down, straight up, back down to to this bottom left corner, straight up, fill in the gaps. Come back. And come up half a roller width, down. Now what we're doing here is we're really evening out that deposit of wet paint we put on there with the roller. We're spreading the paint out over that 3 roller width area. Now at this point we would normally back roll, but because it's such a small wall, I'm going to finish it off and then we'll back roll it again. We want to back roll at this point, especially because, again, we're going to try and do this one coat and walk away. We'll just start in the middle there, bring it down, and just fill in those gaps. So obviously you're going to be looking. You know that from previous videos, when you come to these inside corners, they might tend to cup a little bit because of the buildup of mud in the corners. So through the body of the wall, we're fairly sure we're getting this paint spread, we're getting good coverage. But in the corners, because of that cup, we may have to actually take a closer look, visualize, and make sure we're getting paint right in there. If we have to, we can turn our roller around. We can just go down it like that. Make sure that whole area is getting covered. Because if there's a cup here and we just try to come down with our roller, there's a gap here. We might not get as good a coverage in the middle. We just take our roller, make sure it's filled in, and then we can back roll. Just move our roller width across, gently smooth out any ropes that may have occurred or any grips that may have occurred off the edge of our roller cage. Just a nice, gentle overall rolling. Make sure we get around our outlet. So again, just to be clear, if this wall was, say, twice as long, I would do this back rolling process every 2 sections. And then move along to another 2 sections and back roll into it, and then keep moving. So now this wall will dry nicely, and hopefully our cut-in areas will be dark enough and our coverage will be good enough. Can leave it with 1 coat. I hope you enjoyed that video as much as I did producing it. There doesn't seem to be any shortages of demonstrations how to paint a wall, but I really feel that if you follow this system, you got the best chance of painting out a wall with 1 coat. And if you don't, if you're not happy as a professional, then we're going to have to give it 2. That's just a fact of life. But if the customer is happy with it, if they don't want to spend for the labor and the material, then we'll have to live with that as well. But at least this way, it'll be as covered as the best that it possibly can. So if you have any comments, constructive comments, or suggestions for other videos, by all means leave them. I'll try to get back to you with any questions you may have if you leave them on my channel. And by all means, like the videos and subscribe. Until next time, it's been Craig from Muskoka Painting.